Hi everyone, my name is Courtney and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be doing my April reading wrap up. If this is your first time watching me, if you're coming from my Goodreads video, thank you so much for watching that and sticking around. Turns out if you promote a video, people will come watch it, so thank you. But I like to do a variety of things on my channel. So in addition to themed vlogs, I like doing some of the standard YouTube booktube things, which includes monthly wrap ups. So without further ado, let's get into all the books that I read this month. Spoiler alert, it wasn't a lot. It wasn't just making the video pulling me away from my reading time, but I won't say that wasn't a factor. But there was a lot going on this month in my personal life, and along with that, I just was not in the mood to read, so I didn't. I finished up a lot of stuff at the beginning of the month. I was reading a lot. I had a good pace going, kind of slumped out at the end, and just let myself be. Was watching some anime, doing some other stuff, and that's okay. I had a great February, a pretty good March as well, so this will be my lapse month for the year, and then hopefully we can continue having a good pace for the rest of the year. But let's talk about what I did read. So for manga, I ended up reading Kimi ni Todoke Volume 10. This is a popular anime and manga series from when I was in high school, so it's like mid-early 2000s, but I believe it finished out when I was in college. But it is a very sweet coming-of-age story about two high schoolers, and it really deals with the idea of perception and how your peers perceive you. For the US at least, it is on Netflix, and they added a new season this year or last year, which is crazy. So I definitely highly recommend you checking that show out. It's wonderful, very sweet, very wholesome, but it is a slower paced story, so if you're not into that for romance, just be warned. And then to kind of bridge the gap between manga and novels, I ended up reading one of my first light novels this year, which is going to be Apothecary Diaries Volume 1. So I'll admit, I did read more than I let on this month, and that is because I got to the end of rewatching Apothecary Diaries, catching up with the manga online, and I needed to know what happens next. And if you don't know, the Apothecary Diaries series is a light novel or web novel first, and that is being adapted into the anime and into the manga. And so because I needed to know what happened, I actually skipped ahead and just started reading the light novels from where the story cut off. So around volume 5, and I read up to and through volume 11, but I won't really count that as official reading because I'm going to go back and buy each one in the series and read them, because the official translation and the web translation are a little bit different. But that was like the one thing that I was enjoying reading through. It was keeping me going. So now I'm really excited to go back, read the ones I missed, and continue on in the series. But if you don't know, Apothecary Diaries is an adult historical drama series, and it is about Mao Mao, who kind of gets involved in this detective work around the royal court. She doesn't want to be involved. She knows that it can be very deadly, especially for a lowly apothecary like her, who does not want to be in the rear palace to begin with, but she gets mixed up in all of this drama and starts becoming basically a detective for the court of this Chinese-inspired world. Yeah, it's just fantastic. It's funny, there's romance. Light novels and mangas have a very different pace than traditional American or Western novels, even than traditional Japanese novels, I believe. It's more of a serialized format. I would say it's the closest you'll ever get to like being in the time of Charles Dickens, reading the novels as they are being written in the newspaper. It feels very much akin to that in our day and age. This is translated work. I've tried light novels before and have not really found them to work, mainly because of the translations. And I will admit, there are a couple parts in the first novel that are a little bit rough with like the descriptions, but it's definitely improved, and I know it improves even more in the later volumes, both the translation and I believe the writer's skill. Web novels and light novels are especially for or written by people that are inexperienced or writing their first novel. It's a way for them to get into novel writing. It's basically like writing on Wattpad, except, you know, not Harry Styles kidnap stories. At least to me, it sounds like or feels like this author, you know, was a first-time author. There were some hiccups in the writing, which made the translations a little bit awkward, but it gets better over time, so I'm really excited to continue on with this series. And then before we get into novels, I have one nonfiction that I read this month, and I read Fire Weather, which is a nonfiction about climate control and the state of natural disasters, particularly fires. And it really centers around this small Albertan Canadian city that really relies on fracking and the oil industry. And it is also a city or a town that experienced a massive, really destructive fire. And so it really weaves those kind of two storylines or themes together. As someone in a area that has natural disasters, particularly fires, it was really interesting to read. The first half of this novel, I was really concerned. I'm like, are we ever going to get to the climate change stuff? Are we just going to focus in on this town? Eventually, we did reach reached that point, and I really enjoyed some of the critiques and nuance that the author brought to that story. I will say this was a great nonfiction. It really had you on the edge of your seat, really invested in the story while also hopefully learning some new stuff. I don't know if I personally learned that much new. I learned some new scientific stuff that I didn't know, but I already know that natural disasters and fires and climate change exist, so. But I learned some new scientific stuff, so that was interesting, particularly about fire tornadoes, which kind of scare me now. But if you're looking for a nonfiction about climate change and fire, this is a good one to pick up. Getting into novels, I read one novella and I continued on with the Murderbot Diaries, and I read Fugitive Telemetry by Martha Wells. Like I said, this is a continuation of Murderbot. I've been told to read this before you read the novel, so that's what I did. I still feel like the fourth one was it the fourth or the third one? One of those was my favorite. This was not quite as good, but I still really enjoyed it. Seeing Murderbot's story, how he's progressed, how he begrudgingly is making friends here. But yeah, Murderbot Diaries, it's about to be a TV series, and I highly, highly recommend it. It's basically about this being Murderbot that was a construct basically, and was basically owned by this company and used for security missions. And Murderbot doesn't really care. It's fine with its life. It just wants to watch its silly little shows and kind of fly under the radar. And then for novels, I have a reread. I reread Delilah Green Doesn't Care for my Goodreads video, and I really enjoyed it. This is an adult romance. It's sapphic. It's not quite second chances, but there is a little bit of that element. Basically, Delilah Green is going back home for her stepsister's wedding. They don't get along. She doesn't get along with any of her friends, but she's also kind of had a thing for one of her stepsister's friends, and that friend Claire, who has a lot going on in her personal life, kind of also had a thing for Delilah. And so this wedding becomes this chaotic thing because Delilah Green is there to make trouble, and Claire doesn't necessarily want her friend to get married to the person that she's getting married to. They're hitting it off. They're making trouble. It's a lot of fun. It has a lot going on in their personal lives while having this really cute, sweet romance. It just does a lot really well. But yeah, that's kind of it for my reading. And you may be wondering, especially if you watched my April TBR, hey, didn't you have a readathon that you were doing? The answer is yes. And I completely failed, at least for one of my characters. Simon, I already said Simon is kind of a character that is taking the most challenging courses, but also doesn't care unless he's very interested in something and kind of slacks off. And so I'm okay with him failing his first semester. I feel like it would be good for him. My second character, Mira, the character I hope to have graduate this year, technically I have adjusted and I finished out her second to last semester. So Mira had to do 3 challenges. She had to read a book with a certain amount of letters in the title. I had to pick a book based on the first sentence and read that. And then I had to pick a book based on the last book I read. So technically I have completed her challenges. So for reading a book based on the last book I read Fire Weather to match up with a Fire Endless. For Inscription, I had to read the first sentence and pick my book. I picked Kimi ni Toroke, and then I had to pick a book with 7 letters in the title. 7 was the number I ended up getting. I was meant to read the best 2020 sci-fi fantasy. I read about 6 stories in that collection. I did not complete it. I'm still reading it, so I'm okay to continue reading that into next month, just to continue reading it. And so for that challenge, to fill in that 7-letter challenge, I have the Apothecary Diaries. And you might be saying, that's 3 words, where's the other 4? Well, it's listed as the Apothecary Diaries light novel volume 1 online, so I think that counts. Close enough. It barely squeaks by, but it works, and I'm okay with that, because like I said, this month was rough, lots going on. Sometimes you just have to make adjustments, and I'm okay with that. But yeah, maybe I will redo Simon's challenges in another month as kind of like a summer school kind of option, but for now I'm just putting it on the shelf. I'm not gonna pursue it at the moment, and I'm just gonna focus on getting back into reading and not getting into a slump. But yeah, that was my reading for the month of May and how I did on the magical readathon. But thank you so much for watching. I'll see you guys later, and happy reading!